recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. Mr. Secretary Mayorkas, let me start with you. I want to ask you about the continued uncontrolled illegal immigration into the country, which I think is a very serious threat to the homeland. In July, I asked you about the migrant surge that's been occurring on your watch, and you said this, I'm quoting you now, "We have a plan. We are executing the plan. The plan takes time to execute, and we are doing so." Now, since that time, CBP has released data that showed 2 straight months of illegal border encounters above 200,000, which, as you know, hasn't happened in decades. My question is, when is your plan going to work?
So, in fact, we are implementing the plan, Senator Hawley, and I can walk through some of the measures that we have taken.
My question is, when is it going to work?
So it is, in fact, working. We have seen over the last several weeks, if not the month, a drop in the number of encounters at the United States border. We have been working very closely with Mexico to increase interdictions. We have addressed the issue of recidivism, and if, in fact, people have been previously removed, we are referring them to criminal prosecution. We have increased lateral flights across the border to facilitate the expulsion of individuals under Title 42.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Secretary. Our time is so limited. I just want to be sure that I understand. 200,000 border encounters over 2 straight months, a record in decades, for over decades. And you're telling me that this is success? Are you happy with what's happening at the border now? Is this success?
Senator, as I said then and I say now, we have a plan. We're executing on our plan, and we will continue to do so.
But you just testified that it's working. I'm just trying to understand. Is this success? Are you telling me that this is successful? Your plan is successful currently?
Senator, we are not finished in the execution of our plan, and I never suggested otherwise. We continue to do the work that we are required to do to secure our border. That is an ongoing process, and indeed we are executing it.
Are you happy with your progress?
Senator, we need to do better, and we need to do more, and we are committed to doing so, and we are doing so.
Let me ask you about one of the latest crises that we've seen in Del Rio. Thousands of migrants crossing the border illegally. Reporters have captured images of this. Many are now encamped, as you know, on the U.S. side of the border. How many migrants have crossed into the United States in Del Rio over the past week?
So last week, I think the high point was 13 to 15,000. It is now well below 10,000. We continue to move individuals from Del Rio to other processing centers to facilitate their repatriation.
And how
increased, if I may, Senator, we have increased the number of repatriation flights to Haiti and to other third countries. The size of the population in Del Rio, Texas, has diminished considerably. And let me say 2 very important things which I observed firsthand in Del Rio, Texas yesterday. Number 1 is the human tragedy, just the vulnerability of the individuals who are under the bridge in Del Rio. We cannot minimize that. It is an extraordinarily difficult thing to see. Number 2, I met with quite a number of Border Patrol agents and officers in Del Rio, Texas. I saw them working with members of the Department of Health and Human Services to deliver medical attention. I saw them working with the American Red Cross to deliver medical kits.
How many are currently I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, but we've got very limited time. How many are currently right now at the encampment?
I'd have to check as to today's numbers. It is below 10,000 is the latest information I have.
I just want to go back to your statement earlier to me that you have a plan and that it's working. Is 13 to 15,000 people crossing into the United States just last week? Is that working?
So, Senator, if you take a look at the situation, the discrete situation in Del Rio, Texas, one will view it differently than other challenges along the southern border. That was a very rapid, if I may, Senator, that was a very rapid increase. Really unprecedented increase in the number of individuals, primarily Haitian nationals, crossing in one discrete part of the border. And what we did there is we developed a plan, and we were executing on that plan, and therefore—
Mr. Secretary, this happened on your watch. Listen, here's the problem. Every time before you come before this committee, you always say, it's going to get better. Our plan is going to work at some future point. And you also usually say it's really not as bad as it looks. And then every time you leave, it gets worse and worse. This is a humanitarian crisis in Del Rio. You can spin it whichever way that you want. But you're quite right. We should not minimize the humanitarian conditions for which, frankly, you're responsible. You and your administration are responsible. Tens of thousands of people living in conditions that are startling, brought here because of your policies. Let me give you an example. The Washington Post reported on Sunday that one Haitian woman said that she and her family decided to travel from Chile, where she was residing, to Del Rio because they heard, and I quote, President Biden was letting people in. And of course, you've offered this temporary protected status to Haitians illegally residing in the United States starting in May. Then you halted deportation flights earlier this summer. Don't you think that you bear responsibility for this latest crisis?
Senator, let me speak to a number of the things that you have said. Number one, temporary protected status was in fact extended to Haitian nationals resident in the United States before July 29th. Individuals who arrive after July 29th are not eligible for temporary protected status. That is a provision of the law that we execute based on the circumstances that are contemplated in the legislation.
But Mr. Secretary, my time has almost expired. I just want an answer. Do you bear responsibility for the crisis in Del Rio?
Second, Senator.
Does that mean you're not going to answer me?
I am answering if you'd give me the opportunity.
That's a yes or a no question. Do you bear responsibility for the crisis in Del Rio? Yes or no?
Senator, the smuggling organizations.
Yes or no, Mr. Secretary? Do you bear responsibility for the humanitarian crisis in Del Rio? Yes or no?
Senator, it is my responsibility to address the human tragedy in Del Rio, to address that, and we are doing so. That is my responsibility, and we are executing it as the Department of Homeland Security.
But you don't think you've played any role, and your policies have played any role in fostering and fomenting this crisis that has ensnared so many thousands of people?
Senator, what we are learning from our interviews with individuals is they are receiving false information and misinformation from the smuggling organizations that traffic in the exploitation of vulnerable individuals.
Well, so in other words, it's someone else's fault. All I can say is, Mr. Secretary, is that sooner or later, this administration is going to have to take responsibility for the crisis that you have fomented at the border that gets worse day upon day. And so far, every time we hear from you, it's somebody else's fault. Something's going to happen later. It's quite unbelievable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hawley, thank you.